Good evening, our esteemed viewers. Welcome to the tower once again. Welcome to UNN TV. My name is Dr. Juko, as usual, the presenter of the show and the host. Today, we have a lot of issues that we're going to discuss. And as you know, our children are having trouble with staying home, and we're not having school going on. Today, we're going to discuss one of the great issues with the Dr. Joel. Dr. Joel, you're welcome to this show.
Thank you, Dr. Juko, for yet again this opportunity to discuss on this show issues that are pertinent to our country, and I'm very glad to be here. Good evening, our viewers.
The math of COVID. If you analyze properly, during the pandemic, many parents had experienced increased pressure and erosion of to social support with implication for their mental health. There is a survey that was done by an Anadolu agency, which indicated the majority of parents during the pandemic had financial problems. And this financial problem brought about social isolation. And this affected the emotional experience, that is about sadness and loneliness among children and the whole family. There was also a problem of uh, children staying at home, in which, when children are home, they tend to have a lot of issues. The parents have also experienced problems of supervising their children as they stay home. Talk about the social delinquencies as well. Our children are finding a lot of hard time to adopt to staying home for all that time, and so are the parents. In one of the educational analytic document that I read about this week, it showed that 90,000 girls under the age of 18 got pregnant in the pandemic. Dr. Joel, with your experience and knowledge, I want you to dig deep in here and tell us what are those aftermath effects of a child and the family at large.
Oh yeah, thank you, Dr. Juko, for this summary. Of course, the effects of the pandemic are still far-reaching. Some of them we are still getting to know about them because the economy is not yet fully opened. The pandemic had a very, very big negative impact on the family structure in the country because people were not moving, work places were closed, families were sick, um, financial constraints were everywhere, and most importantly, children were not going to school. Now, what is the impact of children not going to school? One of the biggest family planning methods that the countries rely on is education. I mean, when a young child goes to school at the age of 4 and they get out of high school at about 18 years, they've been protected all this while, they've been made busy. But now here we are having a lag in school going behavior for about 2 years. Adolescent girls are seated home. Adolescent boys are seated home. Also, the people who are doing their work are in the neighborhood. Transport is not going anywhere. So we're having these premature social interactions of young girls, young boys, and also with older people. And we are seeing a lot of teenage pregnancies. Now, these are going to further make the problem of economic empowerment very difficult. Because if you're having a young child give birth to another child, they do not have any financial backbone. They do not, the families themselves, the parents who are usually the go-to people are struggling financially because the pandemic left them not working. So this is a very, very difficult situation. In addition, because these children were at home and their families are struggling, we saw a lot of child labor. We are seeing a lot of child labor because these children are hungry. They have to fend for their homes. So, Dr. Jogo, it's a melee of issues as a result of the pandemic.
Thank you very much, Dr. Joel. When you look at the social structure of Uganda, in which we have extended families, and these extended families tend to be trusted a lot by the people. They tend to be the ones that we stay together with. They tend to be the very ones that cover up most of our day-to-day life. When you realize what really happened in the report that was mentioned, they were saying that 70% of the children that were impregnated were by close people within the family. What's your take about that, and how do you expect people to cope up with such a situation?
Of course, when you look at the history of defilement, of most defilement cases, these young children are defiled by people they trust. They are defiled by people they know. So when the children are not going to school and they are staying at home with uncles and aunties, with relatives like cousins, and they're hungry, whoever has something will use it to confuse or to lie to the young girl and engage them in a defilement situation. So we're having families being challenged. First, they're challenged financially. Now they're being challenged by these domestic issues. And of course, the young people are not well equipped with um, information, with skills of how to fend off these predatory um, advances from their relatives. So we're having social protection in the pandemic eroded at the family level and at the community levels because everybody is busy struggling. They're not looking out for the young children, and the young children are not going to school where they would be protected by the school structures.
Yes, Dr. Joel, when you again you look at the economic side of it, these children are home, and parents, have not been so much accustomed to that situation whereby children are eating too much. They are home, they have been having them at school. All this brings about, rolls about the issue of how to maintain your children and how you offer them what is best. So families seem to be struggling with the way they cope up with a situation for their children being home. Can you also comment about the economic side of it?
The burden of feeding a large family continuously, which is not being productive. You're having many children at home. They're not having much to do. You as parents, you're not having much to do. It brings a big constraint on the family. And we're seeing issues like early childhood marriages being augmented in this kind of situation because parents will give away their daughters at 14 years, at 15 years, just to be able to decrease on the burden in the home. And all these bring a lot of friction at home because if you can't feed your children, you get frustrated, you get a form of depression, and then we're having more domestic violence because of the economic constraints and the demands on the family.
Doctor, let me bring in Lawrence in this kind of segment. Lawrence, you've had Doctor trying to, dig deep into the social, economic, and a way of living with people right now after COVID. I want you also to give us your view about what do you think are the negative impact of the child of COVID on child and family at large.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Jericho and Dr. Noel, fellow hosts. If I'm to just look at the way the pandemic has actually, outplayed humanity, because I don't think we had prepared so well for this kind of scenario globally. Even if there were a few case studies, I think we had
Dr. Joel, look at the political element of this. Though I don't believe doctors are too much in this side of politics, but according to your observation, does COVID affect the performance of government leaders or political leaders in this regard?
Yeah, well, when we look at the political challenge, of course, we had the first wave in 2020 from April, and we had a very, because we're not as a country and as a globe, we're not ready for this. We didn't have the resources, so we did a lot of borrowing. And as we were trying to recover from that, we went into another lockdown. So as the government, even as they planned to have some economic support to the most vulnerable communities, the systems were not in place to be able to give the so-called Nabanja money to the community. So you could see that the challenges of the pandemic were from top to bottom. The government had the challenge of being able to keep the systems running since we're from one outbreak into another. And even our support system, the donors, were still faced with the same problem. You could see that the impact of the government not being able to sustainably or to efficiently cover the gaps created by the pandemic have been felt and are still being felt by the population.
Dr. Joe, let me bring in again Lawrence. Lawrence, I think your sound is now working properly. Lawrence, when you look at what Dr. Joel is talking about, it really goes into almost all the spheres of life when it comes to the people. Can you also dig deep into that and see how how do you think COVID has affected the people of Uganda?
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Jericho. I hope my sound is now better than before.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Okay, if I may, I had just started to introduce that, yes, COVID, no nation or no people on earth had actually, planned that well for an event like this, and more so for the effects that were going to, come out of this global pandemic. We can only speculate and try to, work with what we know, but again, with the effects of any pandemic, no one exactly knows how it's going to exactly impact on everyone in every society. So looking at Uganda specifically, with the numbers you're reporting right now, over 90,000 teenage girls getting pregnant, it serves more to show you exactly where the pandemic has actually put us. I don't think we ever had a scenario like that planned out. In case COVID or a pandemic happens, I don't know whether the Ministry of Disaster Preparedness had had anything running in that direction. But again, here we are. We're stuck with all these girls who are going to be young mothers. We can only hope that they are able to deliver these kids very well, and because already we have a very high mortality death rate, among expectant mothers. Either the kids or the mothers usually are lost in that process. But If I may go further again, stretch this point a little further, back to before the pandemic. Again, Uganda itself already has a high, fertility rate. I think every Ugandan lady or woman is uh, estimated to have at least 3 or 4. I think it's about 5 kids per woman, which is very high globally, and already that had. The reason why even our population is already expanding is because before the pandemic, we were still adding a full million, about 1 million people to the Ugandan population every year. And it's the reason right now we're at about 40 million and growing. So if you add now COVID to this, I think it just served to accelerate an already dire situation we're already battling with. Yes, we can all agree that we are having population expansion or explosion globally. But for a country like Uganda, if you already have your boundaries that are not about to stretch any wider than they are, and then you're continuing to build up these numbers, at a certain point you're going to be dealing with very adverse effects that are going to affect, are going to stretch into the economic part of life, the social aspects of life, and oh yes, of course, also the political, because when people have nothing to do economically, they are going to all probably turn to politics, because maybe that's why they feel there is more livelihood or money or something, that is going to make their life experience more enjoyable. So at the moment, yes, we are stuck with this, and of course, Dr. Joel and as Leber to expound on this topic really, really deep. But I can only imagine what is going to happen to our health facilities out there, which are not, equipped to handle probably these many numbers eventually, because. I don't know how we're going to handle all these teenage mothers showing up, and even the adults are showing up with their pregnancies. So this would, of course, call for a government kind of intervention to see how they can have a well laid plan on a national scale to handle this, because now it's a known variable that we have to deal with as a nation. That yes, initially you're expecting this number of mothers, and then these would-be mothers that we're having right now, the 90,000 or the 100,000, they were not planned for. So they have, they're going to get into the picture. So I would want to see how the Ministry of Health, or any ministry that is concerned, probably gender and equality and all these, jump into the driving seat to be like, you know what, I think we estimated that we're only going to have this number of children. I mean, this number of births this year, but then with the effects of COVID, the numbers might be going up. How are we going to get in and then, try to manage this right now? So for me, it's of course more questions, and then trying to see how the government can, try to realign itself to these emerging issues, and we get solutions that work for everyone, and then such that we can have a good, healthy population out there. Thank you so much, Dr. Joko.
Thank you very much, Lawrence, for that insight. Let me bring in Mr. Kisitu there to give us his view as we try to run away from this topic. Go ahead, Mr. Kisitu, to look at this.
Yeah. Thank you so much, the moderator. In as far as COVID-19 with its effects in Uganda, they are far-reaching, and indeed, Uganda has greatly suffered. I don't know why Uganda has been greatly affected as compared to other countries of East Africa. COVID-19 has affected almost everything, or almost the economy in all the three aspects of the human survival, the social, political, and economic. When you look at the social part of it, most especially the side of learning, interacting with others, solving problems of the society. So problems have increased in the society, including the violence in families, the misunderstandings have increased, corruption has increased as a result of corruption, observing curfew and other guidelines. A lot of money is being exchanged on that time. Still, cases of killing have increased, and we wonder who is killing people, most especially during the curfew hours in COVID-19 or COVID period. Yet we think that by that time no one is moving, and we still have a lot of question marks on that. COVID-19, when you look at the side of education, it has affected us greatly, causing high levels of unemployment, starting from the askari at the gate, the teachers themselves, the cooks, the compound, those people concerned with the compound maintaining it. When you look at the side of the market, sincerely, people who sell rice, we understand that the education sector is the major market, the major source of market for all the rice products. All of those, their market has greatly reduced, and people are very much unemployed that side. Even the agriculture sector has been affected, because most of the things that the agriculture sector produces, it is the education institutions which always consume them greatly. It has been affected. When you look at the students themselves, the school-going children, they have been greatly affected, starting from those of the beginning class, the nursery section. And what parents have resumed through this time around, there are those teachers who have started up the coaching part of it, and they are doing it within their homes to make sure that they can help those young boys and girls who cannot learn, who cannot read and write, at least understand how to write their names. But they have grown up into big boys and girls, moreover, below the age of, let me say, the age of 6, 7. Those kids have not been to school at any point. Then when you look at those ones about P5, P6, P7, around the adolescent stage, and those who don't know how to handle this, yet their parents have almost limited experience of how they can take their children into that, they have faced the problem of pregnancies, which by now as we speak, they are at 34.6% as per the report, which I have, which I happened to receive this week, last week, yes, last week, 34%. Then we don't know what next to those kids. Then still, as COVID-19 proceeds or continues, Uganda is yet to face another pandemic called infodemic. Infodemic, that is lack of information, lack of knowing what to do, well, not knowing what next, not understanding what the world really wants for one survive. And the president coming up at one point saying that it is better for someone to get pregnant rather than dying. Yeah, the question that we always pose is that how many children have been affected by COVID-19 severely, how many have died? That's a question. And if you give us the excuse that it is better they get pregnant without dying, then it happens to be a very lame excuse for keeping education institutions down, because we don't have any student that has died of COVID-19. And it is proven worldwide that a child can stay with COVID-19 and survives without even anyone discovering that this child has at one point been affected by COVID-19. So still looking at the side of the teachers, for the first time, ever since I started to understand how the world survives, a teacher has been very much undermined by the leaders in the country, and they are doing work of work for survival, which is far below their standards. You wonder who is going to inspire the world tomorrow. You wonder who is going to instill the very good behavior of behaving within the child. You wonder what will happen, and as a way of forecasting the future, what will happen still if the world doesn't have anyone to make sure that we nurture the future generation, then expect it. A lot of violence, a lot of criminals being committed, a lot of unwanted behaviors in the society. Therefore, as far as the future is concerned, when you look at the kids who have lacked the information, sincerely, COVID-19 has affected Uganda so much. And the challenge comes from here. For the international schools in Uganda, they are studying. Those kids from well-off families, they are studying, or from the first family, the families, they are studying. Students or parents who have got some good money, their kids are outside studying. Those that can manage to take them to international schools in Uganda, they are studying. Then you wonder whether there is a section of the economy that is being prepared, in as far as the kids are concerned, or the future generation is concerned, is being prepared to control the nation, to control everything, to control all the aspects of the economy. That is being prepared, and there is that section of the economy which will always remain as being the subject to those ones, and that section of the economy which comprises of the majority is not acquiring anything. However, the government has continued to issue out the learning materials in newspapers, lessons on TVs and radios have continued. And then the question is, how many can access that? What is the impact of that in society? And so on and so on. Still, when you look at COVID-19, my dear, the viewers and the moderator, COVID-19 is still tearing Uganda into small pieces. I remember at one point they said, or the president said that now over 200 people are allowed to converge for ceremonies for what? But I've happened to watch the prime minister moving around the different parts of Uganda. And when you happen to look at the gatherings that she always has, they are over the number that was dictated. And of recent, we had the functions at Kororo, and the president presiding over that, and they were over. That is the Independence Day. They were over the 200, the number which was dictated by himself. Then what next for the country? COVID-19 is still a challenge in Uganda, and the challenge is as a result of the mindset of those ones who are controlling us. I beg to submit. Thank you so much, the moderator.
Kisitu, I hope it has sunk. Let me bring in Dr. Joel to wrap up this topic, and then when we go for the break, come back with the deeper discussion of today. Dr. Joel, can you wrap up this topic, please?
Oh yeah, for today, the pertinent issue is that we need our schools open for the children, first of all, to get the social protection, because the more our adolescents remain in the communities without doing anything, the more their futures are becoming bleak. The longer they stay in the communities, the more they are at risk of getting teenage pregnancies, the more they are at risk of child labor, the more they are at risk of further, education and social degradation. So we need to do whatever we have to do as a country, as communities, to ensure that our schools get opened, our children go back to school. Of course, we cannot underscore the health threat, so we need to continue to promote vaccination as a way forward, and also to continue to have dialogue with the leadership, so that ways are devised to have schools opened as soon as possible, because we have a bigger challenges. And of course, on an economic scale, we need to have our people getting back to work. We need to have the economy open, because the longer people stay with poverty without work, the more all these issues that we have discussed are compounded. As you have seen that in such a short time, we can't do this topic justice, because the after effects of COVID are far-reaching. They are far-reaching every part of our socio-economic and educational lifestyle and behaviors. So, Dr. Juko, we need to have a bit more discussions on the effects of COVID, and also to try to brainstorm more on what can be done to stop the challenges our children are having, our women are having, and our society as a whole. Yes, thank you.
I hope you have been having a very good discussion with us all along, and I believe everyone does. So I hope we're going to go for a break, and as we come back, we are going to dig deep into the discussion of our activism and revolutionary politics, as it seems to be replacing the traditional part of of the politics that we've been having all along. I hope you stay as we come back. Don't go away. Thank you. Welcome back to the tower at UNN once again. This is the second segment of our discussion as we try to look at some issues that are really pertinent within Uganda. And today, as we have mentioned it clearly, that activism is trying to replace the whole political structure that we have been having. I want, when you look at what is happening today, we have a lot of activism politics and revolutionary politics, which is transcending the political spheres of life. In Uganda, political parties seem to be, or ought to be, a very political institution, a serious political institution in functioning of modern democracy. However, in situations where we have poor politics taking shape, there is an aggressive dimension that usually come over to take on what is happening. And this is what we refer to as revolutionary or activism. I have in the studio once again, I have Lawrence Semugoma, as usual, as the analyst, and we have Mr. Kisitu in this regard, and I have Joel. Lawrence, let me start with you. When it has become a very big problem that people tend to think of politics as a bad act. People tend to relate politics to something bad, something which is not, moral, doesn't shape people morally upright, and they attribute it to the other saying that politics is a dirty game. I want you to dig deep for us, first of all, and tell us what is politics and how does this politics, how can it be played in the environment that is very conducive?
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Juko and fellow guests for the show. And I really appreciate that question coming from you, as into whether politics or what politics is or perceived to be, and whether it's necessarily a bad thing or a bad activity to get into. Well, politics fundamentally is purely leadership. That is what it is. Because I think all political actors are in places of leadership, trying to effect leadership, and they are trying to, kind of exercise, or rather actually implement the people's will in a way. And of course, with that, you need to be in a leadership position per se. Not that you always have to be a leader to, implement the people's will, but at least politics dictates such. So from time immemorial, that has always been the case. People, when they realize there's no leadership, it is a society without leaders is bound to have so many challenges and so many issues. It's the reason why historically, when you look at the people of Africa, even without necessarily having contact with other places elsewhere, they had their own, kind of rulership systems or chiefdoms or kingdoms, and there was a process to grow to become a kingdom. You didn't start off by being a kingdom. It was a bunch of, small families or small communities that kept expanding and, bringing in more members. And with that membership growing, more strategies came in that now this is our focus. We are having food insecurity. We need to stop gathering out. Maybe some people should farm. That has been the history of people trying to build politics per se. It's needs that bring them together, and this that desire to be secure that has built politics to the way we know it today. Now, I disagree with people who say that politics is necessarily, a bad game or a bad thing. It is the people in politics who are bad, because no one, or rather, when nations or systems are being built, no one accounts for corruption, bribery, and all these other vices that come out of politics. The amount of dishonesty and pick on any vice out there that you've seen in your leaders. No one usually creates a system of governance or rulership as a nation or even as a company, as a corporation, and then he's going to consider that people are going to come in and steal. But why do people steal in the first place? Now, of course, I think that gets to Joel's side of things in the medical field as to how people are born and how they are nurtured, the environment they're in shapes them to be a certain way. People are not necessarily born thieves, but if you're in an environment whereby you're going to be forced to steal because maybe you lacked, or you're just not disciplined enough growing up, I am quite sure being put into a position of power, these vices are going to manifest themselves. So the people in politics telling lies, people in politics who are corrupt, people who are taking bribes, I can assure you, even if you put those people in another corporate environment, these vices would still show up. So it isn't necessarily that politics is bad. It is the people, the individuals. You need to narrow it down to the individual. So if the individuals, society doesn't put enough emphasis on that to try to groom people in such a way that they are upright, I think churches have tried to do that. They try to focus on building very moral, responsible citizens. Most of the churches that are into building schools, especially the Catholic Church, I think is good on education right now in Uganda. I think they dominate the schooling system out there. And you can see the products that have come out from those schools. They're a little different from the ones that probably were not in church-based institutions. But that doesn't mean that those who go to non-church-based, founded schools are going to be any immoral. But what I'm trying to bring out is that the history or the background of a person is going to impact highly on the kind of politician, if that is the path someone chooses to take, and kind of when he's put in that limelight as a leader, what kind of person are you going to have? I remember in schools, people were given opportunities to be leaders of classes and, of segments of school. You're a junior prefect, or, you're the head prefect. How did those people, how did they handle themselves while in school? And when they got out to school and maybe went to the university, that is maybe high school or primary school, and then went to the university, because I think at the university, that's when real political activism starts. People are into now joining into these political, parties, because at that point, you're considered mature, you can make all these decisions, you can participate in, the bigger game. And at that point, if you look at the leaders you have, what has been their track record throughout getting to university while they were still in that grooming, and then after university, what happened? You'll find that most of the people who have had a bad track record from way back, it's not going to change when they get into big leadership positions, at a national level or at a district level per se, depending, because we are assuming that everyone is going to grow in some sort of way, grow their leadership skills phase by phase until they get to the top. So on that note, I would basically just look at this person's background and how they were groomed in order to tell you what kind of politician they're going to make. But again, there are a few scenarios you don't prepare for in politics, because you realize that there's slander, there's backstabbing, there's all these other forces that are in that terrain. and they might bring out the worst of you. So some people might have had a very good track record from the way, from way down. They get into politics, and then the worst comes out of them because they are now trying to fight to save themselves. I don't mean to bring up names, but if you're to look at a person like right now, I think the incarcerated Honorable Segerinya, he has, you've all been following him, or the nation has been following him, and just look at where he is right now. I'm not saying he's going to become a bad politician, but if a batch of misfortune is going to happen or befall you at a certain point when you're trying to, build your political career and probably do good, I mean, I don't know who would blame him if at all he got into a kind of politics which is no longer the other kind of activism politics, as you called it, because I think he's presenting himself as an activist, and he has had a good track record so far. And right now, look at where he is. So that is just maybe just looking at what is playing out there, in the political arena. But other than that, I wouldn't really concentrate on what is bad about politics, because we all get together to frame a system that is only supposed to better humanity, help us achieve our objectives in life, our aspirations. We all have dreams. So politicians are only supposed to kind of mold society in a way that people are able to live peacefully and, achieve their dreams and maybe leave the world a better place than they left it. I beg to submit at that point.
The question is, according to what you observe right now, I want you to use your medical and psycho knowledge and relate to what Lawrence has talked about. What is that reactionary or activism and that activism and revolutionary politics when you define it? And secondly, I want you also to identify the real cause of that direction. Is it generational? Is it as is it a general trend of the world? Is it, what is it?
Thank you, Dr. Juko, for that question. Well, when you look at when you look at the politics of the nation and the world, it's gone through different segments, different changes globally in countries like the U.S., who are seeing uh, a nationalistic kind of movement, make America great, of course, championed by Trump. And also, we are seeing technology changing in how people react to issues. For example, in traditional politics and political groups, we used to have, a few members who are having the platform to talk about the grievances of the society. We right, because I mean the communication mediums were traditional. You would have newspapers, you would have national television, you will have national radios. So access of people to air out the views that probably are eating them about their day-to-day lives was minimal. And then here comes the age of social media, where everybody has a camera, where everybody has a microphone, where everybody has multiple memberships to different social media platforms. So these have provided space for people to be able to talk about the issues, and therefore promoted activism. Um, like Lawrence said, politics is very important. Anybody who is not politically conscious is not socially conscious, because the leadership decisions that are made on a daily affect us. We've been talking about COVID. For example, if um, an individual decides to steal money or to divert funds that were supposed to provide vaccines, provide medication in hospitals, who is going to suffer? The hospitals will not have the necessary materials to be able to provide the service, And in the end, this will be felt on a community level. And where we would have, in a traditional setting, where we would have individuals maybe camp and send their messages to a leader, to one person who is in a party to talk for them. Now they can quickly go into Twitter and say, hey, wait a minute, we are not having doctors in Mulago. We are not having a medication in Mulago. And strictly speaking, that's the birth of activism.
Look at what is really happening. You tend to relate it to possibly some other countries like US, where the leaders themselves tend to be advocating for that kind of rigorous behavior. Like when you remember what happened during President Trump's time, he was too much of that kind of person that was in the social media, and all the time he would inspire his people to be very active. Would you think we have leaders in Uganda that that category, that type, who are very, rigorous, who are trying, who are quite, very active, and people look at them, I mean, look at those leaders and think possibly that activist kind of activities can help to, change government?
Oh yeah, well, definitely. As you've looked, we were in January. We were engaged in an election, and we had people who were previously not traditional politicians, to say people who had not been in our political space for a long time, as as we would have historicals per se, coming up and making an impact, getting fighting for particular reasons and for particular causes. We had the National Unity Platform (NUP) have so many. First, it was just it wasn't a political party. Um, it was a platform, an activism platform, and yet within a very small period of time, because of its activism, it was able to organize into a formidable political party. And what we saw from that, and the power of activism and the power of social media, we saw that as long as messages can be passed across, um, people can be able to listen and people can be able to react. And yeah, to be very specific, we have so many of those leaders. We have so many of those individuals creating an impact. If I could say, if I could talk about Stella Nyanzi, she was a bit extreme, if we could say, depending on your view, on how she was putting out issues. But definitely, she created a trend of people getting to listen to the views of the public. Recently, we have a girl who wants to become who writes about becoming Museveni's side chick. I do not know if you've been able to read that, but it's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek way of putting forward issues that are affecting our country, like corruption, like not respecting constitutional rule, not respecting institutional rule in different sectors of our society. And I think that activism is a very powerful tool, and it is very active in our own country.
Activism, that element of being aggressive. I think, as you mentioned about Dr. Stella Nyanzi and the young lady that wrote a poem. Do you also think the language is taking people into that direction, which is used by people of respect?
I think that traditionally society has found different ways to communicate their problems. If you look at literature, when we have a lot of the great Shakespeare plays, they were they were talking about the social problems at the time. The social problems were being expressed in the form of theater. Now, right now, we're having young people who are trying to put their message forward. Okay, the language is sensationalist, probably to catch attention. Okay, because the matters that we are facing are grave. We would wish that things would be said in a more conventional manner, but again, I don't think we are facing conventional times, given that we're having pandemics, given that we're having widespread corruption, which is not being addressed, which is becoming a norm of society. So I think that individuals are incensed by the level of the social wrongs that are ongoing, that the language that they can master is not the usual, calm language. I think they are being pushed towards using language that would be able to grab the headlines.
uh, saying that or belief that this activism and revolutionary politics is bringing a lot of radicalism, and it is bringing an apologetic, or what we would call low-level leaders into scene, because people who are of a certain class are not ready to, go into such kind of politics, where there is a lot of like running around with tear gas, holding TVs and all that, taking pigs to, to the parliament. Some people with decent kind of background wouldn't so much indulge in such kind of politics. What is your take over that?
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Juka, once again. Again, for that question or perspective that people hold, I think, yes, that has been evident in our politics today, that there are a good bunch of, there's a very good number of people who are actually very good leaders who have been tested probably on the lower levels, like I said, because in politics or in leadership, you grow from a young level, from school, and then after school to community level, and then district, and maybe to a national level. Well, there are people who have been tested probably on the school level, but they've not been tested on the district level, because they can't exactly do what exactly you're saying. They can't get really active or engage the people they are going to be leading in a way that is probably dramatical, or tries to capture attention and relevance, desperately, as many politicians have tried to do. I think you've seen so many of the young leaders right now that we have. And I mean, by the young leaders, those are probably the politicians who are below 40, or, or 45, if that's not far out. Those have been kind of engaged in this very active kind of trickery, and I don't know what to call that exactly. I'm looking for the right terminology within politics. Myself, I'm not a politician, so I don't know all the terms there are. But they've tried to gain some kind of popularity by pulling off all these other stunts, if I may use the word. Yes, people have delivered pigs at a parliament, and then there's been a kind of a rat race between the police and some of these individuals. You've seen that a good number of times, but that doesn't mean that the older politicians haven't done it. I remember there's a time Honorable Ken Luchamuzi, during his peak days, he was still probably in the same kind of game in a way, escaping through yam fields and wetlands and all this, to evade the police while he's trying to make his political statement and assert his position. So, and again, the young people we have right now are seeing from the older ones that we've had in the game or in the field, what they've seen others do. The young ones are doing, and probably dramatizing it even more. If you look at a platform like the the National Unity platform, you can see what happened. There was like everyone all of a sudden had a live feed every day to talk about politics, and this is showing you exactly where the world is tending. That is where we are. Young people are leveraging on technology to put the message out. So it's not even a question that the good bunch isn't exactly participating. There are a few politicians who just stayed behind their phone screens and cameras and pushed out a few messages for the day and things of a sort. It is just that maybe some of their channels did not have the following or the numbers that could put the message out. But I'm sure those who felt that they were called to be leaders in a way have labored to get get onto that traction and then into the new wing, get into a set of new wings that we have right now in politics and participate in that kind of way. But remember that politics goes with numbers, it goes with popularity, and of course you have to be loved by the people. And so many times the masses are going to gravitate towards whatever or whichever person they feel either entertains them most or serves them best. Usually it's hard to balance those two. Some people are just purely entertainers, they're going to just be funny all the time, but when it comes to real issues they might not. However, we've had a good number of politicians like Honorable Munyagwa and all the rest of them, even Katoro Gwama, put out all these other statements that are usually very comical, but again, sometimes when they get to work, they actually do work for the good of the people. Out there, I think there are many young people again who fear politics because of what it has been historically, which is many people have had a few cases put against them. I think you all know of Dr. Kiza Besige's wars since the 90s. When he had all those cases to answer in court, and I think every other opposition political party leader or personality has kind of faced the same lash. I think the person who was an exception to this was, that is the former DP premier, I forget the name, the one who contested in the 96 elections. Yeah, Dr. Pokaanga Samogere, forgive me, my memory escapes me. But I think he's the one who did not have as many political all these other, kind of trickery that has happened on politics. He's, unless I'm oblivious to the fact, but I've not seen any evidence to that to see whether this has happened. It could have happened to the people who are under his leadership, which is probably the young Democrats who are at Makerere and all that, because those arrests have always happened whenever they're trying to put out a message. So that has happened ever since. But recently, as we fast forward to where we are right now with the National Unity Platform being the key opposition party, you can see that the stakes are higher. If you look at the amount of guns that were pulled out, like during the last political season, it's unimaginable that we're having a campaign or a presidential kind of race at that point. It just seemed like we're having a war or something else other than what we intentionally went out to the field to do. And yes, I can understand that COVID was used as I don't want to say the word excuse, but yes, it's what it is. It was an excuse to deploy all those guns. But when you look, both sides were to blame. The army was still, the police and all law enforcement were coming in large numbers. They also encountering a large crowd. Then it became very interesting. Though I don't know whether there was information to show whether COVID cases necessarily went up during the campaigns. I didn't see data in that pointing towards that. But I think we can admit that the numbers tended to go up, I think, after the elections. Probably, by then it was an incubation phase by then. Right now, the leaders we have, I think, speak for themselves. It is what society has pushed out. So if those are the leaders that we have in elected positions, it speaks to the kind of people or population that we are. If they're not good leaders, then yes, the society made a bad decision. If they are good leaders, then yes, we do. And I think it is not spread out that every leader in every constituency or demarcation has actually been a bad one, but some have actually been good, or rather actually good politicians. And now, yes, you're having all these political activism and rebranding coming up, and maybe we shall get deeper into rebranding later. But this is where Uganda is, and we just have to accept our position. And if it's not where we want to be, we can always carry out an evaluation of our pros and cons, and then see how to frame, a better reality for ourselves. Thank you so much.
And let me go to Mr. Kisitu. Mr. Kisitu, as I bring you over, I want you also to be very clear on trying to look at the issue of revolutionary. What is revolutionary activism and activism politics, and why is it coming at this particular time?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, the moderator. To begin with, I first of all thank the previous speakers. I recommend the good work that you did. Revolutionary, when you look at it in a broad perspective, actually we start with the word revolution. Revolution means the fundamental change that is brought up by the people as a way of expressing their dissatisfaction towards the ruling organ or the ruling government or anything that may exist. Revolutionary. A revolutionary is that person who comes up to start up or to support those ones who are expressing their dissatisfaction towards the ruling government. We've had a number of revolutions in the world. And to start with, the most famous one that everyone at least has read about at one point is the 1789 French Revolution. We had the Egyptian Revolution as they are trying to get their independence. We had the Russian Revolution. The world has had a number of revolutions. Now, when you look at our country, specifically Uganda, as in a revolution, people trying to come up in the broad way of defining this, basing on the situation of Uganda, people coming up such that they can show their dissatisfaction, they can express their way of being badly governed. For instance, revolting against corruption, revolting against the high levels of unemployment, revolting about the way how the pandemic has been handled. Let me look at that one, or the recent one. The pandemic has been handled. Revolting about the way how the government is showing tribalism in how things are being done in the government, the important offices. And when you look at the other concept of activism, that is the way of using minimum active energy to show that you can express your dissatisfaction. We've had people can talk using any other language that he or she feels like. People can abandon doing something and they do the other in the opposite as a way of reacting to how things are being done. When you look at revolutionarism and activism, both of them move in the same direction. In a revolution, yes, we have revolutionists, people who are hard-hearted. A revolutionist is at one point an activist, though a revolutionist can show you actions, can at one point show actions, can at one time turn out to be very much violent by even bringing up the physical fighting, the physical exchanging of weapons. Revolutionarism comes in that way. Activism can be in a way of talking, awakening up the population to find out that they can even see how they are being tormented. That is how it comes about. Then with activism, people at one point, as they are talking, they inspire the world, they inspire the public, they inspire the local people to wage up a very strong revolution. And a revolution will always overturn what has been existing, and they enforce what they think or what the population sees that it should be made right or it should be right. For instance, if people are revolting against the high levels of the high taxes, and again within the revolutions, before I look at the other side, what are the causes of a revolution in the way of violating them? High levels of taxation, that can be among the major factors that causes a revolution in the country. Then when you look at the other point of segregation, also is a major cause of many revolutions. When you look at the other side of unemployment in the country, you look at the other side of assassinating some people. At one point, the leader of the revolution or the activists, when they are being killed, yet they are the people who talk about the way how people are being mishandled, then it results into a revolution. When I take the example of the 1789, we had people who could speak, and by that time they used to call them philosophers. The word activism, I think by that time it was not so much used, but I think it existed. But the philosophers, they used to speak out, they used to write articles, some used to sing songs, some used to go even to the theaters to perform on stage so that people can even get to know that this is the way how the government is torturing us. Even the other one who was sleeping could wake up to understand that really things are not going on in the right direction. When you look at how people like Barras in the 1789 revolution, that is in France, Barras, Marat, Danton, then we had the other gentleman by the names of Robespierre in the history. We've read about all these books. They tried their level best to make sure that they informed the world of how King Louis XVI was mishandling them by that time, and his wife Maria Antoinette, who at one time reached at a point of telling the masses who were complaining about the increasing prices of the social amenities in France by that time. And she bragged and they told them that if you cannot afford was it or what? Then try cakes. And yet cakes were very much expensive as compared to what was making people feel uncomfortable. And they were like, we could not continue staying in such a situation. And when you try to relate that to Uganda, yes, the first family is controlling the country. Then someone comes up to make a statement which totally make people's heart burn at one point. And likewise, this person is not being tamed by the wife, and the wife also continues to tell statements which do not appetize anyone. And therefore, when people start to write on social media, currently the social media exists. Why is the social media actually growing at a very high speed in Uganda? In Uganda, you can hardly have the very big congregations that traditionally used to exist. In Uganda, you cannot have that today because of the public order management bill which was passed. And therefore, that even gives a chance to the armed forces to always use extra forces such that they can dismiss, they can chase out all the masses that have gathered for a common cause. But traditionally, those masses were there. People could meet, people could talk, people could express their dissatisfaction. Today, it is only through the social media that you can write articles and they circulate, that you can make videos and they circulate. For example, we can use this platform that we are on right now and we are teaching the world how things are going on and therefore what we should do. Those who understand will pick sense and you will see something and people will always behave accordingly. However, when we look at activism in it, what are its bad effects, the negative effects of it? Though at one point is very good. However, in the country which is not democratic, in the country where autocracy is at the top of everything, activism will always be treated as being bad. In countries where democracy is at the top, in countries where democracy is respected, activists are always listened to and governments always adjust accordingly. And we have seen this everywhere, that those countries, the first world countries, people at the opposition are not always enemies, and always activists are always at the opposition side of the government. But when you look at these countries which are autocratic in nature, the activists are always treated as being staunch opposition members who will never support the government, who will never even look at a good thing as being fruitful at one point. That is how they misunderstand that. That is why you reach at a point and you see someone who is trying to agitate for the rights of the others, and that person is looked at as being a menace in the society. And in the way of looking at that person as a menace in the society, this person is made to feel, you know, we have got feelings. Human beings have got feelings. You find which words to use in the way of activating or in the way of agitating for the rights of the rest, in the way of showing your satisfaction, and you fail. For example, Madam Stella Nyans, Dr. Stella Nyans is being blamed for using abusive language to the first family. But which avenues could the avenues that this lady could have used at one point were blocked? If they are blocked, then what do you expect from such a lady? That is why you will see using of a bad language which is not accepted in the society, which everyone will blame. But if we look at the assessing, examining part of it, we shall come up and ask ourselves, why did this person use such a language? Didn't other ways of communication exist? Sincerely, when you try to assess that so much, you will end up seeing that somewhere, somehow, there is a weakness which must be solved. And yet the person who is supposed to solve the weakness is not ready. That is why you will find people using the abusive languages and even signs. Still, in activism, the effects of it, there will be torture of people. There will be torture. At one point, I was listening to some of the petitions on TV and following them that some NRM member was trying to bring up the defense that the elections were not free and fair on the side of NUP, that he was being, the voters were tortured, they were what, and so on. Giving those as the defending points to his side. And sincerely, we find out that in activism, we shall have torture, and torture is, okay, we could say that it has been there, but the person in government will torture the activate or the person trying to come up to show the world that things are not going on very well. We shall have the emerging of the illegal safe houses, where even the officials will never be allowed to access such areas. We have seen them. After demolishing, after removing in Alufenya, there are those safe houses which even you don't know. And people can tell that, please, you go at this side of Unsad, you will find one. When you go to the ends of Muyenga, you'll find one. When you go where they are there, which cannot even be accessed, even when the parliament tries to force itself, even all the Human Rights Commission trying to force the security officers to allow them access such safe houses, they will never, because they exist to tame the activists who are trying to show the world that things are not going on very well in ABCD and area. We shall have rampant killings of people in the way that are not even, in the ways that cannot even be explained. And people will continue to demand for reports, and reports will never come. That comes as this person being an activist, this person trying his level best to explain to the world what is really existing. And consequently, this person will be killed, and you will ask yourself, why was this person killed? And the answers will never be given. And that as is out of activism in the countries which I mentioned first at the beginning, that where autocracy occupies, where democracy is not given respect, we shall have a lot of allegations which are even not true as a result of blocking people who would fail to express their dissatisfactions. And you've not come up to give us the true cause of some things in the country, and people will start to bring up different theories which not even relate. And in Uganda, actually, in particular, let me give you this as the example, which is very vivid and feasible. In Uganda, that is where you're going to find a lot of allegations that come up, and nobody comes up to clear the air. When the spokesperson for police comes up to clear the air, you will see this person again telling total lies. You wonder where the country is going. This person reads the paper, which is not even very much vivid. And even when the first citizen comes up to tell us something, we'll end up also reading the paper. And when you try to read, to relate what this person has read on the paper in relation to what really exists, you will find out that the paper was just given to him to discuss it for the international bodies. But us on the ground, we shall not be seeing anything. Then we shall have a lot of tormenting others. The rights will always be violated, even if you're innocent. Or what? You'll end up when your rights are not respected, we shall have the effect of diverting attention. Instead of people doing something that will earn them what to eat or the means of survival, because of the way how activism is being understood in the country, that is the negative manner in quotes somewhere, people will always be diverted from doing what is very important to what is not important. For example, the moderator, please give me some seconds. For example, we have now people trying to show themselves or trying to put up themselves on the podium that they are trying to activate for change in Uganda. But the world is not paying attention to them. I don't know whether there are allegations that are coming up in the country. I don't know what really is the problem. But even the other side that is expected to join these people over the front for the red card, let me call it the red card, they are not willing to join them. I don't know whether it is as is out of allegation. I don't know whether it is as is out of what, but we shall discuss that when it comes. We also have very good points about that. Consequently, as is out of all those above, scaring our investors in the country, because not everyone will feel the country as being socially unstable and politically unstable because of the effects that I've told you about. Then still people will be frozen. Those who could come up and speak for the rest will be frozen, and everyone will have the fear to speak out. And that is what exists in the country. And if they see you speaking, they'll always ask you that, oh, you man, what are you, or do you have anything that is defending you? Are you so big in the government of Uganda to come up and speak about what is affecting the population? Sincerely, you will see the economy of our country going to the direction which is undesirable. I beg to submit. Thank you so much, the moderator.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kisipu. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I think let's go for a break for a moment. And when we come back, we're going to go deep and look at what is that transition? Is it that political revolutionary group that has emerged? And we look at the People's Front for Transition, and we look at what we expect out of it and how are we going to have it in the future of the politics of Uganda. Don't go away. We are coming back.
Time takes a toll on everyone, they say. Time is merciless, it won't wait for us to change. Time, I am stressing out, I can't figure out what to say. Oh, time, just give us time. Time, looking back on pictures, and I find it hard to see you and myself in places.
We are welcome back to this show, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate your role and the way you're trying to do all this discussion. With me in the studio, as usual, I have Dr. I'm your host, Dr. Juko, as well, Dr. Joel Servanja, who is an analyst. I have also uh, Mr. Lawrence Semugoma, who is also our usual analyst, and I will have Mr. Kisitu, the teacher, who is also an economist. In this regard, we are trying to analyze these great issues of our nation, Uganda. Let's recently we have had another issue that has come up, which is the Front for Transition. I mean, the Front for Transition. Is it People's Front for Transition? That is led by Dr. Warren Kiza Besigye and the Vice Chairman, the Lord Mayor Elias Lukwago, with Mr. Mabike Michael, Honorable, who is the Secretary General. This has come in to rejuvenate the political, possibly the political brand that has gone down a little bit in the recent 1 month. I think that would be one of the factors. In this, we have seen that they have issued a red card to the president saying he is not fit anymore to be the president of Uganda. Let me bring in Joel. Let me bring in Dr. Lawrence. Lawrence, according to what you see, do you think it's very relevant to bring in a new political kind of a political group? Because we have been having people power and look, which is so vibrant. Here comes another one. Is it intrigue? Is it envy? Is it jealousy? Or it is a normal political contestation?
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Juko, once again for that question. If I may just get straight to it, with all this rebranding that the old timers or the old politicians are doing at the moment, it's not really necessarily the first time. I think we've had a good number of those old politicians who are 10 20 10 15 years into the field, always kind of metamorphizing into another political arrangement or political party per se. So this isn't necessarily like the first time it's happening, but again, of course, it raises questions as to why it's happening right now, more so when kind of the most intense political season is closed. The idea of Dr. Kiza Besigye, Council Elias Lukwago, and all these other, Honorable Ken Luchamuzi, Honorable Mike Mabike, who we missed on the show. I hope he was here to expound on this. Coming together, and then they formed that, new activist kind of group or political kind of narrative that, they're giving the regime a red card. Yes, it does leave some more question marks of why now. I mean, it could have made more sense to open that kind of chapter just before, the presidential elections, and then you could use that kind of synergy to, because all these political players who are into the pressure group right now, who are coming from different political parties, this would have kind of run kind of prior to what People Power was doing at the moment. But they chose to stick to their corners at the time. Some of them sought to first consolidate their positions, which is, if there's a rerun, like Councillor Elias Lukwago had to first get back his mayoral position. And again, it's interesting that right now he's working with, Councillor Lukwago is working with Mabike at the moment, yet I think before Mabike was sort of on the opposing side. So yes, maybe that's a nice spin-off in that people who are initially at kind of divergent positions are coming together, to form a kind of a uniform kind of force to go against the regime. But those efforts are very well appreciated, I guess, on the widest scale of things. even if there are questions, to ask us whether this is really relevant right now, because is that what you're going to be doing for the next 4 years or 5 years while the regime is doing what it does? And if I may, what has happened, I think, in the past is that these politicians can come together like they are right now after political season. Then when it comes to the next political season, everyone runs back to the camp. That is going to guarantee that they get a re-election. So I am waiting to see whether this is going to kind of happen, or rather play out for these old-timers. And yes, they have a big kind of mandate right there as to how they're going to try to send their message far and wide, and kind of, push the message the way People Power did with its all social media engagements and all that. I'm keen to see how, the red card pressure group is going to kind of organize or rather implement this strategy to unseat the current regime. However, if I may just go back a little back in history as to where this kind of rebranding or activism sometimes comes from, I would more so look at the history of the United States kind of politics per se, as as our producers actually put it up on the screen. Immediately after independence, remember that the people from the US were people who had actually run out of Great Britain or England at the time, and they had come here. They had all the ideologies of how the world should be run or could be run, and they came and then tried to implement that system here. Now, initially, it was the Federalists who were, I think, at the forefront of politics here in the US. And eventually, the people on the opposing side, I think, were considered the anti-federalists at the time. And those anti-federalists, then, in the 17th century, are the ones that kind of transitioned into the Democratic Party, which was, I think, led by the Jefferson. Initially it was called the Jeffersonian Republic, but yeah, that is how now the two-party system kind of gets into play. And there's a whole season for that kind of politics in the US in that era, which is about probably 30 years. That is the two, views that were, standing side by side in the political arena in the US history. When you come to the 18th century, then you get more factions coming up. You had the Nationalist Republic Party coming up. You had the Whig Party coming up. So you can see more and more factions, kind of where we are at the moment, in that even, in Ugandan political history, we had those many political parties immediately, the Kabaka, UPC, and all these Democrats and all that. And many of them have actually been washed away, but some merged or, transitioned into other parties. Coming forward closer to probably where you are right now, to the sixth kind of party system. So the US has had probably 6 or 7 party systems, running per se, and for each system or season, there are different actors, different players, different kind of challenges that they have to deal with at that point, and whichever political party kind of presents the best strategy to solve people's issues is what takes the win. It's why you see you never have the Republicans win maybe 50 years or 30 years in a row. There's always a balance of who has the best kind of attack vector for the issues that people are facing. And looking just at where Uganda is at the moment, it's sort of the same thing with our political kind of players in the field. We have, yes, the NRA. Most of the people who are within the NRA or the NRM right now, the movement system, all these people came from all the other, the other parties, and they all just got into this other movement. As you hear, it was a movement, not necessarily a political party per se, though it had to transition into a political party, I think, when they had to open up the ground for other actors, and then, put some kind of competition of ideas in the political arena. And I think it has played out just okay, though, of course, we can say there's some heavy-handedness on their side because they're so desperate not to lose a grip of what they've achieved or managed to get in a hand, and they're trying to keep everyone out. So all the vices that my colleague Chisiti was pushing out of they're trying to kind of exclude everyone from, participation in per se. It is just purely that there's something to consolidate. Yes, you can see the president, while the political parties that came in, all these, uh, I mean, while these activists come into play, like the People Power came in and they're like, yes, we are coming to represent the people and we're coming in to cause this other change. Uh, on the other side, on the NRA or NRM side, they already have Vision 2040, in mind. And here we are at 2021. That means that, T minus 20 per their plan, which I don't think we are willing to give up. And I think that was demonstrated in the way the regime conducted itself even during that political season. You could see they're just opening up all these infrastructure activities and all these, it was just business as usual for the incumbent, while Noob, also with Honorable Chapman, was so desperate trying to kind of push the message out and build relevance and convince people to come back to, to trust him with taking the nation forward. So looking at that, whereby that you're two people, yes, you say you're open to competition, but the way you conduct yourself doesn't really speak to that. It shows you that yes, probably this is another show of that. Yes, we're practicing this, but we're not exactly going to do this. Um, at the moment, yes, the people are, desperate to change, to cause change in the country. Just like my colleague Chisitu just pushed it out about a revolution, and yes, the NRA also kind of presents itself as a revolutionary kind of system or people or system that came because, and indeed they did make so many changes, more so in their first 5 or 10 years or so. There's so many changes. Some of the things that were removed will probably never come back. But at the moment, when we come to Noob, yes, it's the same thing. They also like, we're going to change everything. We are yet to understand what the other plan is. And probably right now, while they are in, the leaders of the opposition, they should be taking more time trying to frame a strategy of how they are going to revolutionalize, politics in Uganda. What are they exactly going to put on the table? And this got so many people in trouble initially. Whoever would ask, what does NUP really have to offer other than removing the head of the government? That question was always pushed in the back, and they're like, no, we just need to get rid of whoever is in that driving position. But yes, you could get rid of Museveni per se, the president, but then what happens if he has already a system which for him he has created for his party? His kind of the first 10-point program he had, his Vision 2040. How are you going to kind of work through that to convince Ugandans that you are really going to put out change? Or it is going to be you're going to get in and then you're conflicting with all the plans that the previous regime had. So at the time, it is just time to go back to probably a political school, if there's any, for our people who want to, really participate in politics and create the change that they so desperately wish to, see in the country, to just reorganize themselves. We can just look at this red card front pressure group right now by Besigye as probably maybe a kind of step towards that direction. But we wait to see what they're going to put out on the table and how organized they're going to be in countering the regime. Thank you so much.
Lawrence, for the insight, and I really appreciate. Let me bring in Dr. Joel. Dr. Joel, when you look at what we are having today, when it comes to rebranding, you look at almost every party is trying to bring in their dangerous substitutes, as I would call it. When you look at the NRM seems to be also citing those people that can replace the president. I saw kind of contestation between the first son, Kainerugaba Muhoozi, and also the son-in-law of the president, trying, to do some kind of internal contestation, though he came out and, negated what was appearing. All these are kinds of rebranding process. When you look at the new front, the People's Front for Transition, they are also trying to bring in all people on board. And here comes also the UFCC. I think UFCC is also going to surface very soon, trying, to occupy space and, giving out what brand is best for Uganda. When you look at all this, is this the right time? Because we've just gone out of election, and I don't know how people are looking at this. I thought it would be politics or business as usual, but it seems like it is occupying the space once again.
Thank you, Dr. Juko. I think that when you look at politics as a game, it's a game of strategy, okay, and it's a game of timing. And I don't think that the timing could be better to try to strategize for 2026. If you look at the United States, they were also in the election not way back, okay, but you can see that Trump is already setting a stage for another attack on the White House. So when you see all this rebranding taking place, you know that the opposition is thinking of what next, because we saw what happened in earlier this year and late last year. We know that we might not be able to continue with the same strategies. So you're seeing a case of old wine, new skins. For example, we are seeing old players who have been part of reform agenda. They have been part of Forum for Democratic, FDC, and now they are still coming up with a package, because democracy is a game whereby you have the majority taking government and the minority taking the opposition, and those in the opposition agitating to be able to take on power so that they can have their agenda played. So these happenings are not surprising to me, because you could see that in the previous election we didn't have, everybody was not fitting within the works of the National Unity Platform. Not everybody was able to express themselves in that arena, so they have to find another arena. Unfortunately, some of the parties or pressure groups that were formed previously have had a very short lifespan, but probably because they've been formed by similar actors, there's a lot that we have learned, and we're yet to see what the red card and the new fronts are going to offer.
Now, Doctor, when you look at the general atmosphere, people are saying that we are tired of politics. Politics has brought us a lot of issues, and now here comes the political actors are very, very, very pertinent, acting in a kind of way that everybody is occupying space. Do you think the public? How do you think the public is going to perceive all this?
I think that usually the public has periods where they are fatigued, probably because whoever they were vying for to take a post was not able to take office. They have that period of fatigue. But again, if these ideas are good and they are able to address the pertinent issues, because we are still having pertinent issues, corruption is still rampant, we are still having mass killings, we are also having extrajudicial situations. So as long as there are still issues to be addressed in our society, politics is still something we will embrace at one point or another. This might not be the period that we are embracing all these ideas, but inevitably we have, because it is a means by which we're able to create better society. So I think that the public will in turn be able to support one platform or the other, but it's not a failed effort.
It seems like the traditional political direction has changed, whereby right now we are looking at basically slogans and a lot of talk instead of, as we mentioned earlier, there is a lot of activism rather than conventional political political approach, whereby people could come over and express their political ideologies and bring about what they are going to do. It seems like this time it's very unconventional. It's too much of sloganizing, telling a lot of stories and all that. What do you think about that as well? Is it affecting the political quality of our country?
I think that society has transformed. Society has changed. If you look at even the social adverts that have been ongoing, for example, the things that people have found catchy during this time, you hear things like Tugabane, you hear things like Pakalast. People are responding more to slogans than big time content being uh, fed to them. They want something that is going to be catchy, is going to be exciting, and again, these slogans are just the icing on the cake. What really happens is that they draw the people in, okay, and then the actual issues or the actual visions for these different groups are articulated. What would be the downside of the slogan kind of politics we are having is if people are only packaged with slogans and they do not have real-time content. But I think the slogans call the people in, they excite them, they rejuvenate them, they awaken them from the kind of slumber that we are having where people are tired and they feel fatigued by the political situations. And then once the momentum is created and that wave is created, then the actual content can be able to be released to the public. So I think that because of the transitions that we're having in society, that is the way that our messages are being packaged.
Thank you very much, Doctor, for the insight. Let me bring in Mr. Kisitu in this regard. Mr. Kisitu, when you look at what is happening now, there is too much of, seems like there is that competition for position, competition for space. And most of our people are really fed up of what is really going on. Would you please come over, tell us what you think about
that? Thank you so much, the moderator. Rebranding, it is something that actually branding itself, that's where rebranding comes from. Branding is the act of giving a name to any product. When you look at it in the aspect that we are discussing today's evening or today's that side, I don't know what time it is, but in Uganda it is a night. Tonight in Uganda, rebranding in as far as the politics is concerned, the parties are trying to make sure that they shade themselves another color. Meaning is that the trend, the model, the way they have been handling issues in the past has outdated. When you have a product that has been on market and you think that in the way of trying to bring it back on the market, you will have to make sure that you shade it another color, you give it another name, then you rebrand it. And that is what we are talking about today. This topic has come about, or this aspect has come about after looking at what Dr. Besigye, the chairman or the president of the People's Front for Transition, deputized by Lord Mayor Elias Lukwago and the other members. Rebranding would be so okay. I personally welcome rebranding. I welcome changing of actions and so on. But when you try to look at the history of the people who are within the People's Front for Transition, Dr. Chiza Besigye being a presidential candidate for a number of times. But that is Lord Mayor being the MP around Kampala region, and again the Lord Mayor Kampala still is the person controlling the house. And from FDC, after Dr. Chiza Besigye handing over everything to this gentleman, the name has gone on my head. The current president is the name has gone out of my head.
No, but
I'll say it out when I happen to remember it. Giving our power to the gentleman, then goes to the other ends, Masaka Road, Katonga, putting up the office there. Is it the people's government? And the president, that's another chairman being Dr. Chiza Besigye, and the vice president or the vice chairperson being Elias Lukwago, the Lord Mayor. What are their achievements? Being a teacher, I would say that we do not just promote a student to another class. We first of all have to look at the report of the student. How has the student fared in this class before I happen to promote this student in that class? We are looking at FDC. How did Dr. Chiza Besigye fare up in FDC? How many marks could I award Dr. Chiza Besigye in FDC? After that, as a teacher, I transfer or I promote Dr. Chiza Besigye to People's Government. How has the People's Government fared? When we are looking at the report very well, how was it fared? What are its achievements and failures? Should I again give it another vote to rebrand the People's Government to another movement, to another group, to another pressure group? Do I have to give it a yes? I give it a no or a one. So rebranding is very okay, but who are those people within the front for the people's front for transition? Who are those individuals? In my opinion, I think, by the before you look at the opinion, but all of those ones who are watching us right now, on the ground in Uganda, the minister, the president, brought his cabinet, and the cabinet right now, I think we can look at what it is doing in the matter of politics. The prime minister, actually being so much different from the others that I've seen myself. That is Mama Mbabazi. I remember seeing Ruakana Rugunda and others that have been there. I think we have not had that prime minister whose role has been to move down to ground to all parts of Uganda, And I remember, was it the other week or sometime back, was in the areas of Bunyoro, trying to find out how the government projects moving on that side. The funds, how have they been used that side? Still, today, I think is concluding the tour in Busoga region and the other side of Bugisu region. I think today she is concluding that side. And trying to bring up the hearts of the people which had been broken. What is the reaction to the opposition towards what the government is doing? Remember, the political era, the voting side is gone that ended. But now, how are we securing the support of the rest? How are we securing that? Thank you so much, the moderator, for the correction. Katonga, I've seen it, Katonga, that office, that side. How is the opposition trying to counteract what the ruling government is doing? Okay, let us come up with the People's Front for Transition. The issue is, what are the objectives of the People's Front for Transition? Are the objectives matching with what the other local Ugandan, the other beginning Ugandan, the other indigenous Ugandan down there in my village, deep in Kituntu village there in Impiji district, the other side of Kapirapeng, the other side of Nakapiribiti, is it meeting their demands? When you look at the aims and objectives of the People's Front for Transition in relation to the objectives, sincerely, are we going anywhere? Then different scholars have come up with different theories that someone, after seeing a party with red becoming very big, has to get another front that has to counteract the activities of this. Having those theories on the ground, what will remove all those theories on the ground? Let them go back on the ground and do work for the people. Still, no party tried in the central region, but in the north, what is there? Nothing. When you look at the west, what is there? Nothing. Western Nile, what is there? Nothing. Then they would at least come up with activities starting from the local councils, the parish, then as you go to the sub-county, consequently taking over the district. The persons who are at the front for this thing right now as we speak, they are people who cannot dance at the tune that that Uganda is on today. Bobby Wine, or the Mr. Robert Chagulanyi, was very much a threat to the ruling government. extent that today a party that has been in existence for just a few years is the leader of having the leader of opposition in parliament. Why? Because they try to dance at the tune that we Ugandans want to hear of today. Now the rebranding is on, but people at the front, sincerely, they cannot dance at the tune that we currently want right now. The methods that we are used before by Dr. Chizaresi, the work to work, today, according to the way how COVID-19 has dragged everyone around Kampala, would Dr. Chizaresi start with his work to work to Kampala? I'm sure it will be the people of Kampala. We are very much suffering, and you bring your work, they will chase him by themselves. Then we had they used to put on the black. What black was meaning? What? Those of this I remember those days. Could they come up with that now? All of those are out there as we speak. What are their new things that they're going to do, such that we can again also try to assess their impact with their impact, and we try to do something with it. As I conclude, as I wrap up, please, the Black Monday, thank you so much, my brother, Lawrence Semugoma. Black Monday now currently could not work because even people are looking for also to eat. People are very unemployed. People don't have anything to use. People are so much poor. So the Black Monday cannot work now. So if my recommendation as I conclude, we need to get new faces which have not been in the public. After having those new faces, the world will be so much eager to listen to what they are saying, as they did last Bobby Wine, new face. Yes, what is Bobby Wine saying? Then they followed. If we could have those new faces now without having the old ones, then the old ones give us advice. Give the new faces advice that let's do this and ABC, or we join those new faces, but not those people front for being at the front of the move. I'm sure we shall not have any impact within rebranding up to when the person marketing the product has changed. The model I remember very well, when you take up a new business somewhere and you be at the front, yet you have been in that old business sometime back. By the time it lost a name or reputation, then nobody will come even if you try to rebrand. I beg to submit. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kisitu. You've reminded me, a teacher of economics who's trying to explain branding. And thank you very much. Dr. Joel, is it something to do with the popularism versus quality? What is this?
Well, I think that well, in politics, you're always stuck with the two. You know, you're always stuck with popularity versus quality. Okay, quality might make you popular. Okay, or you might just be popular necessarily without having the quality. But the best balance is when you have quality and you're popular, because we know that democracy is the dictatorship of the majority over the minority. So you have to have the numbers. It's a game of numbers. However much quality you have, for example, there are people who talked about General Mugisha Muntu having a lot of quality, but again, his brand of politics was not necessarily suiting the terrain, and therefore he was lacking on the popularity, and thus his party and his ideas were not well represented even in the current parliament. So we need the numbers, but then we also need the quality, because you're trying to create change in people's lives. Thank you.
Lawrence, is it, should we say it's, does that symbolize the type of government that we can have when it comes to, you know, the people, the way people behave, the way they, you know, the activism, talk about the sloganization and all that? Is it a replica of the government that we can have?
Yeah, thank you so much again, Dr. Jiko, for that question again. This kind of rebranding or so, Again, yes, we've already given a background to that as to why it was indeed, or rather, it is indeed necessary for any institution or group, or whether political or corporate, to rebrand. And it's in most cases just to seek relevance, to refresh. It's just like a refresher kind of feeling to the masses or the whole environment that, oh yes, we have a new idea right now. Forget what you had in the other release. This is even going to be better than what we had before. So for me, I look at it positively in that, because in most cases, rebranding is supposed to deliver more than what the old was, or what the former was. But looking at how Ant is, not exactly Ant. I know there is also that Ant story, which of course it's. Just like my brother, Dr. Joel, has just hinted right there, that Mugisha Muntu has some supposedly good quality politics. And I think many Ugandans have always shared that sentiment, that he's a very good political player, but he doesn't seem to come all the way to the front and all the way to the scene to take up the stage. And I think the most recent experience he went through, which he was losing his presidential seat within the party FDC, kind of showed you how a person can be backed into a corner, and then it makes him do things that he never thought he would. Being part of the biggest opposition party kind of arrangement, political party, which is FDC for the last 20 years, and then he just gives it up for 200 votes, because I think that was the margin between him and the current FDC party president, Amriat. And then he goes on to establish a whole new party, which only God knows whether it has numbers or offices like the way FDC had tried to do for the last 20 years plus. It serves to show you what exactly, or what the kind of personalities or players we have in the field, just like Elias was just elaborating down there, that how, if these people were saying that they're transitioning or they are rebranding to something else, how have they fared in the past? I look at Muntu and I'm like, wow, he had a very good track record to the top. And then I think when he's supposed to run for president, I think then Dr. Besigye comes back into the game, and then it's all very disorganized. Then when he comes back for re-election, and then he has to contest this time as a party, as a national presidential candidate, then he's beaten off the seat. These are things you don't plan for, even however much of a character you have and a personality you have. You can see how that has played out. Now, a person like Besigye right now coming back again into the front, the FTP, is it the FTP right now, the other arrangement? It is a PFT actually. FTP is an IT term. It is the People's Front for Transition. So he comes up again. Now, him having, of course, the biggest experience and the biggest resume of all the other contenders that he's seated with on the table. I wonder whether when it comes to 2026, if there's a presidential race, who is going to, stand out to be the sole candidate, if this is going to be a kind of the same, it's going to operate the same way the inter-party kind of dialogue has happened before, whereby they have to choose the strongest person in there. And if again Besigye comes back in 2026, that he's the one who's going to take on the sole candidacy role. Again, this speaks a lot to the quality of politics we have. We can see that, yes, young people have come up. I think they've tried to demonstrate that, especially more so aligning. I think they did align with FDC before, and now they've aligned. I think we can agree that there's more alignment to NUP at the moment. But if the old players are not giving way, you can see the young people now went into forming the National Unity Platform, and that is where their numbers are for the most part. I'm not so sure whether PFT is going to have many young people in there. It's almost the same thing with ANT and all these other establishments that have come up. But we can't downplay any of those initiatives, because at the end of the day, you might be surprised. It isn't necessarily that the NRA or NRM was the strongest force even in the Bush War, but again, it emerged as the strongest. So I went to see what, how this plays out. It might be so early to tell, and I wish we had at least a member of the secretariat or the PFT group to come and elaborate what their strategy is, and how they intend to bring down the government without necessarily just sloganizing like you're saying, Dr. Juko, and then giving a red card. That has not yielded so much in the past with all the strategies we've had. So it's a good place to be at the moment to see how things play out. But yes, all efforts I think are welcome at this.
Yes, Lawrence, as we try to wind up, you are a very good supporter or a good proponent of federalism and UFCC as a group that is trying to foster that kind of governance. What is your take into all this space whereby whoever that comes in doesn't give the full ideology or their policies as regards the social, political, and economic spheres of life in Uganda, and UFCC is coming to cover up that virtue? What is your take about that in 2 minutes?
Looking at the way Uganda is at the moment, we all agree that yes, we are desperate for a change of guard. Yes, that is one, and I think that it only solves just one of our issues. But then probably the biggest issue we're facing, or issues we're facing, entrenched in the way we organize as a society. In form of what form of governance we're having. I think we wouldn't be having half the problems we're having right now with all this political prostitution we're having, where people are changing parties anyhow. And one day you're yellow, the next day you're green, and then the other day you're red. It doesn't really show that we're really running a healthy system. If people are moving up and down, something is exactly not right. With UFCC, I think it has to be one of the best solutions we might have to take on, or rather admit that is probably going to, get us over the trenches where we are right now. Federal as a proposition has been on the table since inception, and it is nothing new that right now this is necessarily something a new group has come up with that we need. It has always been there, predating our own independence and all that. But there's always been a reluctance for the political players or the leaders we have. And this is because most are seeing a kind of a disproportionate kind of distribution of certain resources or assets. And they're like, no, if we were to go federal in 1966, 62 per se, then maybe the other places would have never developed. So there was a kind of line of thinking that no, let's first put everyone in the same kind of pot and then keep steering, and then maybe if it is sugar we are adding or salt to the pot, it's going to kind of spread out. 50 or 59 years down the road, we can all agree that the butter is not really spread across the entire surface of the bread. The people who promise to kind of break this kind of misalignment, or rather disproportionate kind of distribution of resources, are not exactly doing what they promise people to do. So UFCC, I think, is a good platform that we can all agree that can be given a chance, or should be given a chance, for all these political players to come and see how we can frame a new kind of reality for the country. I would wish to see what PFT's position is regards to a federal kind of system. And I think they've hinted about it somehow. Of course, it's not their biggest catchphrase in there, but I think it's in there. But we want to hear it come out more clearly whether this is exactly what they are trying to push for. Of course, it's clear that the current regime, that's not the direction they want. They've expressed that on a good number of occasions, even if it is supposedly the case that they were the current regime had promised to give federal to the people of Uganda per se. I think that's where I want to leave that. If we can have all these players, if we can have Loop get into the table and PFT, if there are any other sympathizers out there, they don't necessarily, political players don't necessarily need to be coming from a party. You can come as you are, and then, we sit on the table and then try to evaluate where we are and see if we can get a better reality and, secure a better future for Uganda. Thank you so much.
And how they are trying to function. They are trying to bring federal on the table. Would you please give your view as to what you think the federal, because now many political pundits are saying that the biggest problem of Uganda is the misappropriation of resources, as we have been trying to discuss about it. Now, political analysts are saying that one of the issues that we should look at is the federal system of governance, in which each person carries his own cross. People will be more active and, with a lot of passion when it happens in their own segments in terms of nations or states or tribes. What is your take about that?
But, well, people use different forms of government as just, they just use them as messages for their new fronts, for their new strategies. But sometimes they're not even really committed to those governments. So I don't necessarily think that it may be because we're in a unitary kind of government, uh, governance, that we are failing. If we're carrying out what we're supposed to do in a unitary government, for say, if we're saying that if resources are allocated to hospital, resources get to be allocated to hospitals. If we say the education structure, schools are supposed to work this way, and we make sure schools work that way, I do not think we would have a failing society. Even if we have a federal state, which would be um, which would be might try to solve different issues of people owning up to the development because it's their particular region. I think that if we continue with the same strains of corruption, we continue with the same strains of embezzlement, we continue saying one thing, formulating very good policies, and then not implementing them, we will end up in the same corner. Okay, I think that changing the mode of the form of government, the way we govern, might not be the biggest crisis right now. The biggest crisis right now is that we are not doing what we are supposed to do. Okay, the opposition is giving ground when they're bribed, they're given small bits of money, and somebody will declare I'm in another system. We had we had a person who was championing, the Honorable Betty Kamya was championing the federal system in 2016. She even had a party. She traversed the whole country telling us how good the federal system would be. But currently, she's in the current government, supporting the current government. So I do not think that these ideologies are more than skin deep. I think that we first have to organize ourselves on implementing what we are saying before we can even try to transition ourselves into another form of government, which will come with its own challenges.
The discussion will have to continue on the platform. I wanted to bring Mr. Let me bring now each of you 2 minutes to wrap up and say bye-bye to our viewers. Let me bring Lawrence first. Lawrence, can you come over and say your views? Wrap up your views in 2 minutes, and then you say bye-bye to our viewers.
Thank you so much, Dr. Juku, for us this opportunity to appear before the wider world and share our message. What I could say is right now, Uganda just has to just walk the talk. I think a lot has been said, and I think it's time to act. And we can talk all day about issues, but if you're in a place whereby you're supposed to do something, you're head of a ministry, you're head of a parastatal, even if you're head of a political party, just do exactly what you said you would do. So let's just become more proactive or active in the way we carry ourselves around. Of course, considering all these views and perspectives that technocrats and all these analysts are giving, because everyone is just trying to see that Uganda gets better in sort of way. UFCC, PFT, Even the NRA might, in their way, kind of think that they're trying to build a better society. But they should also be cognizant of the fact that if things are not going well, they should consider the other voice of reason that comes in to tell them that, okay, the way things are going is not right. Can we just steer things a little to the other direction such that, we even out the plan? So my message for the day is just, let's just become more actors than talkers, and just keep the conversation going, and maybe eventually frame a better reality than we have right now, or at least. Thank you so much.
Yes, Dr. Joel, can you wrap up and say goodbye to our viewers?
Well, thank you, Dr. Juko, for this for today. And what I would like to say is that all these political pressure groups and all this activism is very welcome, because we need to continue agitating and talking about the issues that affect us as a society, because that is the only way we can achieve meaningful change. So it is up to the public to choose a direction, but we also would implore that as we look for the catchphrases, we need to provide quality leadership at whichever opportunity that avails themselves. On the health situation, we need to continue to put into effort everything that we can to fight the impact and the effects of COVID, what we discussed earlier, because it can rob a lot more from us than just taking our lives. It can take our livelihood. Thank you for the opportunity again, Dr. Junko, and good night, our viewers.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kisitu, I don't know whether we can have you to say bye-bye to our viewers. Mr. Kisitu, can you now say goodbye to our viewers?
Yeah, thank you so much, Doctor, for the opportunity granted. Federal system of governance, actually, before I even say a lot, but when you look at federal is a system whereby regions tackle on their individual problems, and the central government or the ruling government could be there just to make sure that it monitors. Its work is to monitor. So federal system of governance is the only way to go. And I could say, before I even proceed the other side, before the coming of colonialists, the regions of Uganda, the regions of within Uganda, were within the federal system of governance. Buganda under federal system of governance, Busoga under federal system of governance, and Bunyoro and other regions. And what happened when colonialists came in Uganda, controlling Uganda, actually giving, that is Mutesa one giving the colonialists the gap to help him control, protect Buganda. That is when we lost everything. At the time of us receiving our independence, those agreements that they signed even before, they're the ones that caused the problem. Even up to now, we are sure we are demanding for federal, but those in central government following the footsteps of Obote that they stepped in, are the very people, they are the ones that made the system not to act like the way it used to be. When you happen to look at those countries where federal areas have developed, the bottom-up planning is the major way of how we can develop. The attracting of the masses to engage in planning and development is the only way to go. The utilization of the local resources to develop the individuals in a given region is the only way to go. That is the other thing that countries that have developed have resorted to some time back. And therefore, when we look at the federal system of governance, is the only way how the world can fare out. We've had scholars who have come up in Uganda to advocate for federal, but who are those individuals that are on the forefront for federal? And they are the people that most of the world, the people could not even follow. We need to come up as UFCC. We need to come up and we tell the world what is federal, what were the advantages of federal before. Remember when the colonials came, they found us with the very good comprehensive system of governance, and they also admired it. Taking Buganda in that as a case study, they found everything so clear, and therefore that is what even most of us based on to say that Buganda or Uganda was never colonized. But We just invited our people. They came here. They found a system that was so clear. And therefore, just to know that in somewhere in courts, when someone sees you with something good, we would like to make sure that it suffocates that. The British found this in Uganda here very good. They felt jealous about it. And I think that is why they even reached a level that if we give them the federal system of governance as Uganda, that the way we found it, they would become so much bigger, even more than us, even more than them, because they found a system that was driving itself. And that is why even these puppet leaders that we have today are so much hesitant to allow us have the federal system of governance. As I conclude, I see that time is not a very good friend. Let us go back on ground, UFCC. I'm communicating now to that group. Let us come back on ground and we try to build structures such that we can tell them how advantageous is the federal. Sincerely speaking, in Uganda, we just have a few individuals who understand what federal is. Majority do not understand what federal is. Even when you go in schools when they are teaching, they rarely talk about federal system of governance. I don't know whether it is unintended government policy of not teaching the young boys and girls what federal is. But we need to have conferences that teach the people what federal is. After having all those activities being done, sincerely, nobody understanding will be against federal system of governance. But so far the start is so good. People that always follow us on this platform, they understand what federal system of governance is. Also, when I try to quote the words of the Kabaka on Bulungi Bwansi Day, who came up and said that Abaganda, all the Buganda people, to take a do kunonya ekifo kya Buganda mu Uganda. That statement means a lot. We are suffering, we are unemployed because we are lacking the federal system of governance. Our land is being grabbed because someone who is in control of all of these affairs doesn't know the history of the region that he or she is playing with. We are having the ministers who are trying to control the region whose history is not even known by them. I don't think that we, Muganda, would come from Buganda here, goes to the other region of Busoga, of Bunyoro, of Ankole, and understands how those things are being done. Yet you here in Buganda, you grew up taking matoke, taking those things that we eat here in Buganda, and you go the other side where they eat karu, and you think that this person will preserve the karu which is consumed in another part of Uganda. So let regions tackle on their own problems. That's the only way to go. That's the only way how Uganda is going to develop. Let the central government remain there as an overseeing body when making the national decisions, but let decisions be made at a decentralized level of governance. Let planning be decentralized. Let implementation of all policies be decentralized. I beg to submit. Thank you so much, the moderator.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Kisitu. Thank you. I hope everything has gone perfectly well. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot go beyond this part of our discussion. The discussion remains into the social media platforms that we have. Please go there, share our videos, and be able to talk about them and extend to other people that are ready to understand and give them give them some kind of sense out of what we discuss. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you very much for listening to us all the time, for all your money that you spend to buy data, as well as thanking my guests for their tireless effort to make research and be able to give us the best out of it within the discussion. I also thank our producer for the work he's doing to make everything move into the best way. Ladies and gentlemen, it's very, very pertinent that we have our country at heart. Uganda is for every one of us. All the issues that we discuss here, we do that because we want to have the best of our country. For the purposes of good governance and good political direction, we urge you to register with the Uganda Federal Consultative Council which is going to sit very soon to discuss issues concerning Uganda in the federal system of direction. We employ you for all the effort that you do. We have a lot of people that have registered with us, and we hope we can have more and more. We want experts. We want politicians. We want religious leaders. We want everybody on board. And then we sit down and decide to where Uganda should go. I can't go beyond that. See you on Sunday once again. God bless you and God bless Uganda. Bye-bye.